What if exiting is the wrong goal? So many founders bookmark their business journeys with fear on one side and freedom on the other, but what if both of those drivers are limiting you?
I just kind of said, like, I don't know why I continue to feel this way as everything objectively around me is getting better.
Jay Berard is now fueled by confidence and cash flow, and to him, there's no better way.
I'm going to be more of a magnet and bring positive things into my life, and I'll tap into the fear-based stuff as necessary, but it will not be the default fuel anymore. I really am just driving the bus, so it's like, that doesn't mean that I can't drive it off a cliff, and I'm not naive about it. When you come from nothing, the safety net is zero. I'm happy to go back to where it was.
I'm Harry Morton, and this is Moneywise, a show not about how to make money, but about how substantial wealth changes your life, for better or worse. It's made for the members of Hampton, a community of high net worth founders to connect and learn from each other about topics exactly like this. I'll speak more about it later on, but for now, if you're a founder doing at least $3 million in annual revenue, check it out at joinhampton.com. But let's talk about Jay. He didn't always live this life free from fear of failure, and he didn't always have the spending habits that he does today. We'll get the whole story, but of course, we'll start with the thing that you're already itching to find out, what he's built for himself today.
So I value the business equity at zero because I'm not going to sell it. I would rather be the person who assumes their net worth is less than it is. Let's say I think that I'm worth another 4 or 5 times EBITDA multiple, and then I'm actually not. That feels a lot worse. So business equity, sure, I think is zero. I've got about 8.5 million liquid invested, and that's a blend of mostly public equities. I got some crypto, and then I have another 500,000 or so in private deals. So that's going to be like real estate fund, private equity deal. I actually do have some venture bets. I've had 2 or 3 that are zeros, and that starts to not feel good. You know, when you first start making venture investments, you're like, I'm a VC, I'm an angel investor, this is cool. And I realized very quickly that you need to make a lot of bets to have an outsized return. So I don't know how much more I'm going to do of that. There's about $1 million of equity in my condo, which again, I don't really think about, but if I needed to sell it, that's what it would come out of it. Yeah, it's about 10 million, I would say. That's like accessible.
By the way, just talk to me about multiples in agencies, because I don't know if like other people in the rest of the startup ecosystem necessarily, because I'm in agency world, I get it, but like I don't know if everybody else understands this. I'm describing you as an agency. Maybe you describe yourself as a consultancy or a recruiting firm, but like, yeah, what are the multiples on that?
So I actually have had an offer in the past, and I did go to the purchase agreement. We went the whole way, but the numbers didn't really. They weren't worthwhile enough, but it's, from my understanding, it's like you can expect 4 times EBITDA, right? And I think after you get past 5 million EBITDA, I think at that point, like PE might be more interested and like the multiple goes up.
Sure.
This is what I was kind of what I learned. But like all deals for me are going to be the same. It's going to be like, hey, we'll do 4 times EBITDA. We'll acquire your business. You'll stay on for 2, 3, 4 years. You know, it'll be cash, bit of equity in the new business. So you give away all the tax benefits. You're going to probably make that money anyways, if not more. Yeah. And you love your business. Actually, it's like, do I want to do what I'm doing, but work for a bigger company just to say I had an exit? And the answer is no. So that's why I value it at 0. And I think that there are better multiples out there depending on the industry. From a recruiting perspective, the thing is like, is there really recurring revenue? There's recurring relationships, but they have to use you for the search, and they may or may not every year, right? So that's why I don't think the multiples are that great. And that's why there's a lot of like smaller independent recruiting shops, because you could make really good money. You just might not sell it for a huge multiple.
Yeah, totally. Okay, I've got us off track. I think Jackie said in your notes, you've like half your investments you've labeled Jay's plays. What do you mean by that?
So Jay's plays in the public equity portfolio, I have a financial advisor. Half the money is in the model. It's not like in an S&P. Like it is professionally managed, and the other half is in Jay's plays. It's almost a joke in the sense like I call myself the CEO of Number Go Up Technologies Incorporated, and these are stocks like Meta, Tesla, Shopify, what have you, that I've chosen to invest in at certain times. And it's funny because Jay's plays return is way beyond the market. And I know that's because Jay's Plays was born in the depth of the 2022 bear market. I might get whacked someday. But for me, having the money that I choose to invest in those equities, it's also like a bit of fun in terms of it's validating what I believe to be true and where I'm willing to park my money and say, I think that Meta at 100 was a good bet, And it turns out that was a great bet. And I like that I get the validation of doing that. Who knows if I'll beat the market in the long run, but it's something that I actually really enjoy doing. When the tariffs came into play and things started to slide, the joke was that the board removed me as CEO. Like it's just like, we try to have fun with it. And the reason that we can do that is because I have the income generating asset where, I'm not just relying on what's been invested. I'm really just focused on the income. So
what are you cash flowing from the business personally right now?
About 2.5.
So 2.5 million in personal annual cash flow. That's enough for a pretty comfortable life. And this is what that nice, comfortable life looks like. What's your monthly burn like right now?
Okay, so I'm not proud of admitting this, but I don't pay attention to the burn as much. I don't really have a budget, but I know that there's 3 different levels. There's 3 tranches of spend that I'm mindful of, okay? If I had to bare bones it, if I had to look at my real fixed expenses and I'm not doing any sort of elevated experiences, or I don't really have elevated memberships or health clubs or whatever, it's probably 15K a month. I don't have kids yet, so that's also an important thing. That will obviously go up when we have kids. If I think about my life in terms of how I actually live it, which is, we have elevated gym memberships. We kind of we do kind of whatever we want when we want. We don't really look at the menu on the or the prices on the menu of a restaurant. That's probably more like a 25, 30K sort of life. And I think if I'm being realistic with myself, that's really what it takes, I think. And then the big one is, we travel extensively. And when I really incorporate the life I want to be living, on top of all of that, it's probably more in that sort of 50 to 60K range. But it can swing, and it probably hovers more in that second and third tranche. But if things hit the fan, I could go down to, I think, less, obviously. I try to keep my fixed expenses and everything quite low, just in case.
Yeah.
I want to be free. That's all I care about.
What is the safety net to you? What's the bar?
When you come from nothing, the safety net is 0. I'm happy to go back to where it was. To be honest, it was hell.
Are you though?
But if I had to go back,
come on, man. I used to tell myself that all the time.
Let me reframe that. I'm not happy to go back to 0. If I had to, I could do it again.
Yeah. But how hard do you think that would be in reality? Because I can say for myself, we've kind of call it lifestyle creep, whatever. It's not crazy. I think we're on a fairly sensible end of the spectrum here. But I look at my life and I'm like, that would yes, technically it's possible. We could go back to shopping at a cheaper supermarket and not buying organic food all the time. And yes, we could kind of cut our personal trainer, and we could do these things to kind of reduce our monthly burn. But that'd be fucking painful in reality. Do you know what I mean?
One of the best sayings that I got early in my money journey was from Ramit Sethi, the guy that's I will teach you to be rich. And it's basically that you have to put all of your energy into making more money and not cutting expenses. So yes, it would be painful. I might be naive in saying I could go back because you get accustomed to these certain things, and they're not even luxurious things. They're just nice things. Maybe it's a nicer gym. Maybe it's a certain, we get certain, health tests that cost a couple $1,000 a year, that we think is really valuable to us. It would be painful. Maybe I couldn't go back. I just think that you like to think that you're not so far removed from where you came from and where you started. As painful as it might be, if I have to crawl into a hole and become a shell of myself again, I wouldn't enjoy it. Do I think I could do it? Yes. Do I want to?
Yeah.
No.
It's exactly. Yeah, totally. It's possible.
And I hope that I'm in a situation. I hope that I've put myself in a situation that I never have to. Right. I think the interesting thing about my situation is that I really am just driving the bus. So it's that doesn't mean that I can't drive it off a cliff, and I'm not naive about it, right? I'm really not naive about the situation. I'm 100% responsible and 100% in control of my destiny. So it's hopefully we keep things going the way they are.
Sure.
I would say that what's interesting in the line of work that I found myself in is that you need a lot of things to go right in order to see the money, right? So it's recruiting. It's there's a lot of moving parts, whatever. So when I was first starting out, when I had no capital, it's a risky business. It's you either going to get paid a large sum or you're going to get paid 0 in a lot of situations, right? I would say that once you have 100K, if you have 100K outside your business, that to me is okay, well, that is again, it's just the psychological number of 100,000. I think if you fell back to that baseline, you're still in a place of offense. I think that as you have that, so my journey with that whole money thing of trying to make money in my business and whatever was, started with 0, You're doing the same thing over and over and over again. Then now you've got 100 on the outside. You're just doing the same thing over and over again, but you're actually better at what you do because now your fallback point is not to 0, it's to that 100. And so that actually makes you a little bit better at what you do, I think, because you're not so stressed to the outcome. And even when I hire somebody on my team and they're in the same kind of like financial journey, I always say, like, there's levels to the game. Don't make your first dollar and invest it. Like, make your first dollar and get to a psychological safety number where you're not going to be crippled if you have a bad month or a bad quarter. And it's different for everybody. Now I don't really think about psychological safety as much because of the situation that I find myself in. It's more so just, where do I want to maximize my opportunity?
Jay didn't always live like this. Believe it or not, there was a time when he was actually frugal. So what changed? Also, he keeps saying back where I started, but we haven't actually established where that is yet or what that looks like. So let's go back for a moment.
Welcome to the Great White North Canadian Corner.
Winnipeg's an interesting city to be born in because it's a place where there's just such incredible people, right? It's a smaller city. There's not much going on. There's not much opportunity, but the people are fantastic. When I look back on my upbringing, I'm glad I left the city because I really expanded the horizons. And when you grow up in a city like that, you don't know what else is out there. Like, you really only know your suburb living in a small city.
You moved from Winnipeg to Vancouver for a Craigslist gig. Tell me about that.
So when I was 23, I had just got out of school. The first thing I ever did was I started a positive social networking app in 2012. So was right at the right time to do something mobile. And I think being from Winnipeg, just the idea of getting an app on the App Store was a huge accomplishment. For the first time in my life, I started to have, panic attacks, and I was anxious about the future, and I didn't know what I was going to do because I ultimately knew this thing wasn't going to go anywhere. And I'm also doing it in a city where everyone kind of knows you and everyone loves to talk, whether it's positive or negative. And ultimately people might want to see you fail. And so I had to deal with that pretty quickly. And so my girlfriend at the time got into a fashion program in Vancouver. So I was like, Vancouver, sounds great. I had maybe like $5,000 or $7,000 saved up. I was living at my parents' basement. We were moving across the country and we were moving in together. So first time paying bills, all that kind of stuff. I applied for a couple jobs. I applied for a director of people potential at Lululemon, which was like, they wanted like 10 years of HR leadership experience. And I applied and I wrote them an email and I said, like, I know people, I know potential, like, I'm your guy. Here's my bartender resume. But I was so naive that I genuinely thought that I was well suited for that job because I literally had no idea how anything works. The only other job that I really applied for was this business search consultant role on Craigslist. And it was offering $200,000 a year. And this is in 2014. So I was like, I could be a business search consultant, like, for 200 grand. Like, well, what's that? And so anyways, I applied. I got a call. Some English guys called me and they were explaining recruiting or headhunting. And I didn't really understand what they were talking about. I went for an interview. It was in the industrial area near the airport. It was a shared office, carpet, like not a really nice office above a spice manufacturer. Like,
Arrakis could have been a paradise. The work had begun, but then the spice was discovered.
Like, just hilarious. And in the interview, they're like, well, you could make $200,000, but it's 100% commission. You're an independent contractor, no draw, no benefits.
Wow.
I was like,
yep.
All right, I'll start Monday.
Did you make the 200K?
So the journey for that year was, first 3 months were absolute hell. I gained 20 pounds, went flat broke. I needed a deal or two to close sort of in that third or fourth month just to get back to even, which luckily I got very, very, very fortunate that happened. The third ever position that I closed in recruiting was actually a CFO role, which was a pretty sizable fee, which kind of bumped me ahead. And then from that point, 4 months in, I kind of ran the table and, was the top biller at the company, was the youngest person, was training the new people. And it didn't really make sense for me to stay. So about a year and 2 months, I left and started my own company, which I've had now for 9 years. So
cool. Okay. So what made you take that jump? Was it the same naivety that got you into the thing in the first place? Like, what was that leap like?
I think for me, it was, although there was a ton of risk associated with the opportunity, for me at that time in my life, it was just, I knew in my heart of hearts that I just wanted to live a big life. Being from Winnipeg and being in 2014, even the idea of like making six figures was a huge like accomplishment, and it was a little bit more rare. Obviously that's changed now of what that 6 figures means. But like, yeah, so the first year I made about 150,000 and I was like 23, 24. And it was kind of unfathomable for me. And I was like, wow, okay, here we go. We're off to the races. And so I think the reason I just took that job with my blinders on, and also like, again, that first 4 months was so like anxiety inducing. And I come back to that experience of having the failed quote unquote startup and having the public failure. And this is why it's so important to fail. For me, I already went through the emotional battle of that failure, that when I started to go through a lot of the emotional battle again of not making any money and being on my own and not wanting to be the guy who leaves a place like Winnipeg and is back 6 months later because he couldn't make it. All of those foundational experiences gave me the strength to keep going. And so that's why I really believe that every failure and every step forward you take does take you to the next level. When I look back on it, it's like, dude, you took a job on Craigslist for 100% commission with people you didn't know in an industry you've never worked in, and you're living on your own. And like the amount of risk, it's like if I had any sort of reasonability or rationale behind that thinking, no, I would not have taken that job. But I think it was just that, you know, you get blinded by, you want to live a big life, you want to go full speed. Here's an opportunity where it could facilitate that. And so I just went for it.
Where did that sort of like, were you always like that as a kid too? Or is this something that kind of happened to you like during university, college kind of age? Like what do you think it was?
We don't come from money, and we're not like some of these families that have like, you know, multi-generational businesses or anything like that. And so my parents couldn't give me, you know, the capital, or they couldn't give me the network, or they couldn't give me the head starts that so many people are afforded in their life. But, you know, they gave me the most beautiful things of all, which was my parents gave me this incredible self-belief in myself and self-confidence. And growing up, the rhetoric that they always used was, you can do anything that you want, but you need to get good grades. You need to treat people how they want to be treated. And how that translated later in my life was this incredible amount of self-belief and self-confidence that I could do anything as long as I took care of the main thing. And it's something that I carry forward today. It's like, you can do anything you want as long as you take care of the main thing. And so I think for me, my journey with that was, I genuinely went from, you know, let's say in my teenage years to like kind of believing I could do anything I wanted to in this life. I think a lot of that got shattered in that first experience that I tried to do something on my own there in Winnipeg. I went from having this incredible amount of confidence and optimism and just this hungry belief in yourself to I would say in my mid-20s, a lot of the fuel and a lot of the thoughts were actually a lot more pessimistic. It was a lot more, you know, if you don't do this thing, this bad thing's going to happen, or I got to make this amount of money, or this is all going to fall apart, or I'm not enough, so let me like go make money and externally validate myself to prove to myself that I'm enough, you know? And I did that for years, and it was the fuel that I needed. It was the fuel that I fell into when I moved to Vancouver and worked at that company for a year. That was the fuel. It was like anxiety, fear-based, you know, bad things are going to happen. You better get to work, external pressure. And it was the only fuse that I knew how to use for, I would say, honestly, I'm almost like ashamed to say this, but it was like for 6 or 7 years, it was the default because it was such a formidable time in my life that like sort of young, eyes wide open, bright-eyed kid went through this journey. And only, I would say, I'm 34 now, only about 3 years ago did I start to bring back that love-based, optimistic-based sort of mindset and approach to my life, because it took a lot of work to switch that fuel.
Yeah, which do you think's more powerful? Like I think about this a lot, because like for sure it's the chip on the shoulder that has kind of chip on the shoulder, insecurity, fear, anxiety, all these things, like these kind of negative emotions basically are what have driven me personally to do what I've done. Not entirely, but like it's a big part of the motivator that kind of gets you out of bed every day in the morning. You're like, fuck, I gotta get going. I gotta get after this. Like, do you think that's a good thing or not? Like, I think it's so much of a common trend among a lot of people that build businesses. I'm speaking about myself. I kind of needed that to get here. But now where I want to go is to the next stage is doing it from, without kind of sounding like some wanky thing, but like I want to go from a place of abundance rather than a place of scarcity, right? I kind of hate that language, but whatever, it kind of works, right? I want I want to win because it's fun to win, not because I have to. Otherwise, I'm not worth anything, or I'm going to be broke next week or whatever. As someone that's maybe between those two or has gone from one to the other, like, which do you think is more powerful? Like, did you have to start the way you started, I guess is what I'm trying to say?
Well, there's that. I might mess up the lyric, but even Drake has a lyric where it's like, anxiety is the place I go to get my work done, or something like that, right? Right. And obviously fear and anxiety is a great motivator. And again, so many entrepreneurs and just so many people are generally wired by that, and it does create action. And so, I think when you're starting out, you need to have the self-belief. But to your point, like, if you just relied on that, you may not take the leaps or the staircase the way that other people are wired. For me, again, it sounds so obvious when people say you need to learn how to go from a state of surviving to a state of thriving. And if it was so easy, everyone would do it. But it's not easy. It took me 2 years of working on myself, therapy, journaling, all these things to come back to leaning into the fuel that I wanted to. The reason for that, and the way the sort of metaphor that I use, is I had this candle that I burnt like full tilt. And in this candle is my sort of fear-based, anxiety-based, I'm not enough candle. I let that candle burn for 6 or 7 years, and it's the only fuel that I knew. But at some point, as that wick, was no longer able to light, I was trying to use that fuel, and all I did was I just felt like shit. Externally, things are great. Anyone looks at your life, things are great. I've traveled 70 countries throughout this journey in the last, 10, 15 years. I've done some really cool stuff. Like, I've ran with the bulls in Spain. I've trekked with nomads in Western Mongolia. I've lived with monks in Bhutan. I've swam in the Devil's Pool in Zambia. I try to have this life where I can experience what the world has to offer. And it's so amazing. And I'm so grateful to have those experiences and that I've chosen to do those in the time period that I have. But the underlying tone during that time was still a deep sense of anxiety and fear, and a deep sense of I'm not enough as a person, even though outside looking in, it's like living the life, essentially, right? I just kind of said, like, I don't know why I continue to feel this way as everything objectively around me is getting better. And it just came down to, like, really doing the internal work to say, am I tapping into the right fuel source, and am I thinking about myself in the right way while I'm doing these objectively cool things and objectively living a great life? Now, actually, the candle is regenerated, so maybe I can use it as necessary. But I needed to tap into this other fuel source, which was, let's tap into just pure optimism, loving ourselves. Let's tap into living the life we want to live today, how we want to show up today. We don't need to delay. When I was tapped into that anxiety-based, fear-based thing, I wasn't consistent in the gym. I would say, I'm so busy. Like, people wouldn't understand. Like, I need to do this and make this money before I'll worry about fitness later. And then you listen to some podcasts and you look at a guy like Sam Pard, like, well, this guy's more successful than I am, and he's pretty fit. So, like, obviously there's a path there, right? The way I was showing up in terms of, like, I wasn't buying any clothes. I was, like, just wearing the same things. Like, I've changed all of that to now being like, I'm going to live the life that I want to live right now. And I'm going to be more of a magnet and bring positive things into my life and just focus on that. And I'll tap into the fear-based stuff as necessary, but it will not be the default fuel anymore.
And what has that deep work, as you call it, kind of looked like over the last 2 years? Like, is it just the therapy and the journaling? Is there anything else beyond that? Or is it just kind of like self-work, basically?
It's a combination of everything. Journaling's helpful, right? How am I looking to show up every day? What do I actually want in life? Like, this is how I'm feeling. That's been very helpful. Therapy was a really good nudge in the right direction. And that was actually helped me label the fuel. It helped me label the theme in my life, which was this I'm not enough theme. And this is something that I think is so important. The word rich, people use the word rich. They don't always respect the meaning that it carries. So when someone defines someone else as rich, they go, oh, that person's rich. It's always based on the monetary aspect, because that's the only thing that people can see when they're trying to label that. You know what I mean? Like, that person's rich. But it would be a lot better if people just said, oh, that person has a lot of money. It doesn't carry as much weight, because there's people that have a lot of money that are completely broken. They have terrible spiritual health, emotional health, physical health. They don't have good relationships. They just have a lot of money. But we say that person's rich. I can be rich without much money. I know people that don't have much money that I consider extremely rich, that live an incredible life. And so I think that label is very interesting. And I only consider myself rich because when I have the whole wheel in working in my, favor, I guess.
By the way, Jay's a Hampton member. He was actually among the first members to start talking super transparently about his finances and getting the community to give him feedback. It's something that he says has provided him a lot of value. And so here's why he did it.
So the reason that I chose to share, this was actually like maybe a year and a half ago when we were doing our forum group. I said, I could tell you guys about my business, but I don't really think it's going to lead to that much of a meaningful conversation. Why don't I tell you guys about my current setup, how I'm invested, how much money I have at my age. This is what I expect it to become. There were some people that are a little bit older in my group. So I was like, maybe you guys have some insights on this. I haven't had kids yet, but I'm planning on having kids. Like, what should that look like? How should I be thinking about this situation? Because I thought that was a lot more meaningful to my life in terms of how I should be thinking about everything than just like, hey, let me scale my business a little bit further. So that's why I chose to share. And I think it actually generated this like incredibly deep, healthy, amazing conversation. And I think it actually inspired some people to share more about themselves. And so we just got to know each other a lot on a deeper level. And actually the feedback that was shared with me was so helpful that I'm hoping by doing this podcast, whatever I share, it either resonates with someone who's currently in my situation or maybe looking to become in my situation or was in my situation. And that's why, not only did I share in Hampton, but it's also why I wanted to come on this pod.
If you also want to get this kind of feedback and connect with people like myself, like Jay, like Sam, and you run a business doing at least 3 million in revenue, check out joinhampton.com. The best part is that we're not just having these conversations online, we're meeting in person, creating local to you connections in your core group. And there's a ton of great events happening all over so you can get real face time to have these vulnerable and important conversations. So yeah, that's at joinhampton.com. Anyway, back to Jay. We just went through his emotional timeline, but speaking of sharing numbers, what about the financial one? Tell me first about the revenue journey of Jagger. Like what was that in year one and what does that trajectory look like to now? What is it, year 8 or 9?
Yeah, so it's funny. When I first started, it was just me. I think we did $500,000. Then we did $1 million the next year. I started bringing on people. I'm like, oh, this is like, I'm going to go $500,000, $1 million, $2 million. This is going to be like, I'm just going to hit doubles the whole way. And then, our business like had a really tough time in 2020, right? Because COVID, everyone went remote, everyone went freezing. So like that was actually an interesting journey because I had started investing money in 2018. And so I've got my business and I've got money on the outside and it was bull market till 2020. And so in February or March of 2020, whenever that happened, the market corrected like 30%. So I'm looking at my life savings and seeing it correct by 30%. Actually, at that point, it was now less than the money that I'd put in. So you start to really, spiral where you're like, oh, should I even invest it in the stock market? Like it's less than what I put in, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time that happened, my income went to zero for 3 months, basically. So that was a really interesting time in my life where I was like, oh, wait, I'm actually not, I'm actually way more correlated to the economy than I thought originally, right? That naivete of thinking that you're just your own sort of, on your own journey. It's like, no, we're actually much more correlated. And then, so again, I think that year we probably stayed around $1 million. And then I think 21 and 22 was pretty crazy. We went from 1 to 2, 2 to 4. There was a bear market in 22 in tech, or 20, it was more so 23, which I think we slid back down to like maybe 2.5, 3. And then, since that rebound, now we're actually pushing like high 7 figures, I would say. Well, that's probably where we'll end this year.
Tell me about like how much you were paying yourself during this period and how your lifestyle changed over the years.
Yeah, so the business, I'm 100% owned, no debt, no external capital, so I can kind of do whatever I want with it. When it was just me, it's the costs of running it is actually quite low in our space. And so when I first made the first jump from 500 to $1 million, I still think my take home went up just because it's obviously like a percentage of that increase. It was probably like I was making $500,000 a year, and then I was hovering around $1 million a year, and then now it's like you said, kind of like north of $2 million a year, and that's I reinvest in the company. We have all the modern tools. We're now doing a lot more things. Like I'm hosting a lot of more events, or I'm investing money in these founder groups that I'm a part of, which are really amazing. And so like just kind of like doing things like that. Lifestyle. Okay, so when I first started out, again, I'm from Winnipeg. I come back to like, I'm from the prairies roots, not a flashy person. Well, at least I wasn't when I first started. Originally, when I first started out, I was a chronic saver. So I might have been making a bit of money, but I got a lot of energy from being like, well, look how much I'm keeping. And I didn't spend much. So I was very cautious around that. I wasn't traveling that much. And that was probably for the first, let's say 2 years. And then I started to make a little bit more, and I started to be a little bit looser with it. Like I'd be like, okay, well now we're gonna like really focus on traveling, and we're gonna really do some things. We've upgraded the living, like the condos and things like that over the years. Where I'm at today with that sort of lifestyle journey is, I would say that there's levels to the game where if I even just take travel, for example, I went from using points and only flying economy no matter what, to maybe premium economy, to now, it's like I can and will fly business class anytime I want to. I still don't care if it's like a short flight. If it's an overseas flight, I'm always going to fly business class. That's probably the highest level of the feeling of wealth. Like the next level beyond that is what? Like the private jets. Like there's such a gap from where I'm at to where that is, where it's like, that may happen sometime, but like it's such a jump that like I'm so happy with being able to just fly business class as an example.
Now, even though we've talked a lot about how Jay likes to spend to maximize his lifestyle right now, that doesn't mean he's overdoing it. He's lived and learned a little on that front.
I think that money, again, our relationship with money is really like a vibration, or it's like a frequency, right? So I've done the chronic saving thing, and it worked. It created some space in my situation. It gave me that building of that independence, like I mentioned, trying to be a little bit more anti-fragile, right? I probably swung too far to that pendulum, that approach to money and the energy I had towards it actually was at the detriment of not only the growth of my business, but also the growth of myself, right? And I've also swung the other way of like making a ton of money and spending a ton of money. And, you make all this money and then 3 months goes by, but you've swung too far where you stop kind of caring about the number. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, where's all the money that I made in the last 3 months? And that doesn't feel good either. So it's really about finding that balance of energy of like, where is the sweet spot? And it's different for everyone. I know people that spend every dollar they make and that keeps them in the game. And I know people that save every dollar they make and they don't do anything with their life. And it really just depends on what you want to do. But I just feel it's like a vibration and a frequency, and everyone has a different relationship to it.
Yeah, awesome. Tell me, what brings you the most joy of the things you spend the money on?
Historically, it's been travel. I love going around the world and seeing how different people live. I used to get a lot more of these, a lot more out of it. Culturally, you're present, you're in the moment. You can take these experiences, these stories, these memories, right? And I've also done the party trips where we're at a club till 6 a.m. and having like an amazing time. And like that memory is amazing to take forward. As you do more and more of those experiences, it does definitely change more to like consumption. And I don't know if consumption feels as good, right? But I'm just an experienced person. I want all the experiences in the world. I'm not a car guy. I'm not looking to like acquire a bunch of stuff, So for me, it's experiences, but more importantly, it's sharing experiences with people. And then the next part of joy, which is what I'm experiencing now, is I love to see other people around me be successful, whether that's someone on my team, whether it's something I can help them with, whether it's like if I'm writing a check to a friend or something like that, or that brings a lot of joy. And I always donate every single year, but I think the philanthropy thing will be the next version of where I can really, get a lot more joy out of giving. And by the way, I wasn't giving anything during the fear-based years. Even though like people say you should be, I couldn't bring myself to do it because I was so fear-based.
You mentioned like in those early travel experiences, you were really present and you were kind of really, in that experience. That's just another kind of agency guy thing I can relate to. I wonder, how do you handle switching off when you're away? Like, do you switch off? Because like this is another one of those things that like we don't talk about necessarily. On this show, it's about the money, right? But like, we're working hard for this cash flow. That cash flow you're generating every month, even though you've got a team behind you, it doesn't come for free, right? I'm assuming you're still working pretty hard, right? And when you go on vacation, do you really go on vacation, or are you kind of like half on vacation, but also a little bit checking your cell every night or every day?
My journey has gone from the workhorse to the kind of facilitator. So I have like a very amazing team, and they can handle a lot of the things. I'm involved peripherally, or sometimes I'm involved much more deeply. So from a business perspective, it actually allows me to do that. When I didn't have that, I would bring my laptop with me and I would always be on. But again, now I have a very, very great team that does that. So the nice thing about where I'm at in my situation is I can dial in to make more money. I can dial back. My team is just so competent in what they do that it does allow me that extra freedom. As it relates to unplugging, again, over the years, I just feel like even that saying, home is where the Wi-Fi is, I hate that. Because when I first started traveling, like my first big trip was like when I was 19, then I did like the solo thing at 22. I was backpacking when I was 21 and 22. And I think I had a BlackBerry. There was no one was on their phone. No one was checking Wi-Fi. Everyone was present and it was just the best. And I had a digital camera on my wrist to take photos. and that is never coming back. And it's also why I think that time value of where you're at in your life is so important to do the things that make sense at that time. Like backpacking at 21 and 22 is when you should do it. And it's such a great experience. And if you've never done it, you're not going to do it at 32. I don't think anyways. It's just not going to feel the same when you do it while you're still in school or whatever. Right. And this goes for a lot of things. Travel's a big one too. It's like a lot of people say they're going to travel when they're older, or they're going to like stack and retire and then travel. It's like, but like places change over time. It might not be what you think it's going to be in 20 years. It's like, if you have the means to do it, like find a way to do it now. If you want to do those things. And unplugging is very hard. The only times that I've truly unplugged is when it's been forced. When I did the Western Mongolia trek, it was 8 days, no phones, no service. And it was beautiful. Yeah. It was amazing.
Sick.
And
I want that.
And the business was fine.
I guess put simply, like, does your business make you happy today?
My business makes me happy because I get to work with great people. It's a network amplifier, right? I get to work with amazing companies, hiring managers. My team's amazing. It's very repetitive. I feel like I've been doing the same thing for 10 years. Base hit over base hit over base hit, different searches, whatever, but it's all kind of the same. And there's less of a challenge as a result. So everything is happy. I'm a 9 out of 10. The 1 out of 10 is that challenge, that deeper sense of like, I want the struggle. I still want the struggle of something, growth. And you get pulled in these directions when you're in these situations. And I hope this resonates with a lot of listeners. I'm being pulled in a higher level version of myself, in a bigger version of myself that I can't quite see. That's going to require some things. It's going to require some hard work. It's going to require some failures. It's going to require more of me. And it's going to lead to beautiful outcomes. I'm equally being pulled into, things are pretty good right now. This is pretty comfortable. Not only is it comfortable, it's pretty great. And do we really need to do that? Because like, we could just keep doing this. Like, things have been pretty good so far. And if we just keep this up, like objectively, things are going to be great. But if 10 years goes by and all I've done is this, I don't ever want to look back and say, that was my chance. I was being pulled in that direction. So that's where I find myself today, asking myself, are we going to lean into the courage it requires to do it? You know, or are we going to stay comfortable? That's the question I'm asking myself today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I want to come back. I can't remember exactly how you worded it at the beginning, but you essentially said, you know, like as a boy from the prairies, you wanted to have a big life, let's call it. I don't know if that's the word you use, but let's say big life. What's your definition of a big life today, do you think?
My definition of a big life is you are waking up every single day and your feet hit the floor and you're excited about what's possible. You're excited about what you're getting yourself into. I think it's a life where you are bringing your best self every single day. You're having a positive impact on everyone that you connect with, but you're also in this, like, I don't know, I feel like you always want these big outcomes that could potentially happen because of the work that you're doing. So that, I don't know what that means in terms of like practical steps, but you know, I want a life, my definition of a big life is, you know, you're waking up every single day. There's a lot of exciting things that are happening in your life that can happen. You're leaving a trail behind you that someone else can see and they can take something from that trail and they can apply it to their own life. And, you know, everyone that you interact with has at least an opinion on you. It doesn't, you want it to always be positive, but you can't control everyone's perception, everyone's opinion of you. And when I die, which we don't know when that's going to be, the only thing I care about is that people that are still on the world or still on earth once I've passed, when they think about me, there's a funny memory, there's a great memory, there's something I did that helped them in some certain way. Like, everyone wants to talk about legacy, and it's like, I don't really care if I have like a hospital named after me or like whatever, or I had this X company or whatever. Like, I just think about the individual people And that's my definition of legacy, is like, when I'm no longer here, what do they have to say? And hopefully it's something that I added value to. And by living a big life, maybe if I've inspired somebody, because in order to live a big life, you need to go through big challenges, big obstacles. And yeah, I guess that's my definition of it.
That's cool. I love that. What I didn't hear was any kind of like external measure of success. Like you didn't like, I'm interested, is there like, you know, I want to get to like 100 million in net worth, or I want to be able to fly private, or I want to like have a 1 billion square foot home, or like, you know, is there any of that stuff that drives you at all?
I've flown private a couple times. I don't care what anyone says. It's the sickest experience. You know, like you show up on your own time. You just go right off the plane. When I think about a number, I mean, I think 100 million would be cool. Do I think I can get there? Absolutely. What does that mean for me at that point? Well, obviously, you know, there's definitely, you know, quantum leaps that you can have in your life when you hit these certain, you know, trajectories. I think 100 million, or maybe even it's 50, but that's real FU money. But I don't even want FU money, because I'm not looking to say FU to people. Like, I get it, right? If I say that now, I could still get hurt somewhere. I'm not at the point where I'm completely isolated. If I was to be like, I got FU money, I got you can't F with me money. Yeah. And that is where I think people should strive to, is like, you can't really mess with me. I'm pretty good. I'm not looking to say FU.
How do you get that kind of home run, let's call it, if like a sale, as you've mentioned, is kind of off the table? Like, what's the trajectory to get there? What do you think that's going to take?
If I really wanted to break down the current situation, how that extrapolates from, let's say, 10 to 100 million, it's probably over the next 35 years of compounding at a certain percentage of the equity that I have. You know what I mean? Like, it's probably, I get there at like, I get there if I leave things the way they are at 65 or 70, maybe, you know? And at that point, I don't know if it matters. But if I think about that, what else is pulling me, it's probably that next business where I have this business that still runs and spits off cash, but I'm playing the home run game here. And the nice thing about the situation that I'm in is not only do I have like a little bit of a financial footing, but there's like a huge network based on the work that I've been doing for the last 10 years. So it's like, there's definitely other businesses to pursue in that realm. I don't think I'm going to pick we work a lot of early stage startups, and like sometimes I have equity in them because I love the founder or whatever. And that might do something, but it won't be that kind of outsized return. So it's definitely going to be from like starting another business, and it may not have to be venture backed, but like that would be the faster path to it. It's not the current one.
Jay loves his life of just living with the cash flow and really trying to make every day awesome. But a lot of the founders we've talked to have talked about delaying gratification in order to live their absolute dream life later on. That's exactly what Erin Galperin did. And to him, that was the right call. You can click here to find out why.